One of the world's toughest data protection laws has come into effect in China. The Personal Information Protection Law gives individuals far-ranging rights. It makes it more complex for companies that deal with data to run their businesses in China. And that applies even to firms with no presence in China. Well, Tommy Xie, head of Greater China Research at OCBC Bank, joins us. Tommy, data is the lifeblood of tech giants. So how will they navigate these new rules and grow their businesses?
Hi, good evening. So I think before answering your question, maybe I just give audience a little bit background about why China want to do that. So I think with the digital economy developed further, so we do see the increasing awareness and the demand for the balance between the personal data security as well as the use of the big data. It does not mean, before the enact of the law today, there's no law governing the personal data security. So there is, I think in the past, what happened is basically we do have the law, governing the data security and the personal information, but it's scattered across the different laws, such as the e-commerce laws, advertising laws, consumer rights law, etc. So what happened right now, we do have the centralized law system, which I think will make the thing more effective. So back to your question. So I think this is not something brand new for a lot of companies. So as long as you don't try misuse the data, especially the personal information, I guess most of the time should be kind of the BAU for the moment for most sectors.
Well, I suppose there's bound to be some impact on the e-commerce industry. Any idea how big an impact that could be, and by extension, could it even affect China's economy?
Right. I think it's really sector by sector, as I mentioned, right? So I think some sector can feel more. So talking about this overall, the e-commerce or maybe the internet platform in general. So there's the potential impact on the revenue side of the business, because we know quite a big chunk of the revenue of the internet platform, for example, came from the advertising. Right, so this advertising revenue could be affected, by the new personal information law. So I think is more like on the revenue side. But the interesting part is judging by the experience in the EU. If we can recall, back in 2018, EU also unveiled something kind of we call the General Data Protection regulation, right? Back then, there was quite a lot of concern. What's the impact on those tech giants? But in hindsight, if we're looking back, actually the impact seems like it's still quite limited. And we do see, some big tech giant actually benefit from the tightening rule, because I think those companies have the resource, have the capital to invest to comply with the laws. While the smaller guys may not really have those enough resource and the money, right? So, and also for the marketing managers, they tend to give more business to the big guys, because I think those big guys can solve the problem. If the big guy cannot solve the problem, how about the smaller guys? So that's why I think net seems like the impact is manageable at the moment.
And at the same time, how effective do you think this would be in putting the power back in the hands of the consumers?
Right. I think in general, it should be the good news. I think because a lot of countries are doing the same thing right now. I think whether in terms of the EU, in the US, I think in Singapore we also have something like a PDPA. So I think indeed, to some extent, the consumer have the more choice to choose whether you want to share with the information. But again, this is also about awareness, because in the past, Chinese consumer didn't really care too much about the privacy, so they are willing to sacrifice some kind of the privacy for convenience. But with the further development of the digital economy, that may actually change a little bit. So I think it really depends on how the consumer want to use their data more rationally. But I think that's where also depends on the education from the government as well as from the companies.
So could we say that convenience will be affected? And also, do you think that consumer behavior will change with this new law in place?
Well, it's always a trade-off between the convenience and the consumers. But I do think, increasingly people tend to value more like privacy. So in terms of the consumer behaviors, yes, there might be some kind of the changes. So they may be more aware or more cautious to share their location, right? So I think that's quite a popular service right now provided by a lot of phone companies, for example. So I think, yes, that may potentially have some kind of the change. But overall, I think it's not I mean, it's not brand new happening in China. We've seen the similar things happen in EU, in US, in other parts of the world. So I guess in the end, the companies should be able to adjust for the potential change of the consumer behaviors.
Well, thank you for that, Tommy Xie, OCBC Bank.